I am here with Peter Lavelle, host of RT's CrossTalk. And Peter, let's go back to ancient Greek times. Thucydides. Thucydides said he was actually the first historian, where he's recorded as the first historian. He wrote the Peloponnesian Wars. And he says what made the war inevitable was the growth of Athenian power and the fear which this caused in Sparta. And I'll bring this up to modern times. The Thucydides Trap says when one great power threatens to displace another, war is almost always the result, but it doesn't have to be. How does this apply, Peter, to what's going on with the U.S. and China?
Well, it's and that's why we're talking about Thucydides, and that's why it's a trap, because essentially, if we look at the paradigm, and that we have to say where this term comes from, it's a man named Graham Allison, an American academic. And he and his colleagues at Harvard did a case study of 16 major conflicts where there was a status quo power and a challenge to it. 12 out of the 16, and we can provide the link at the bottom of that article. 12 of the 16, war happened. In 4 cases, it didn't. How does this apply to what's going on in the Pacific right now? China is making a bid for leadership. I'm not saying supremacy, but essentially what it is saying is that China is not rising. China is returning to its proper place in the world, in proper place in world history. Now, for most Westerners, they think of Western civilization, the colonization of the world, like the British Commonwealth. But see, that all happened as China was declining, and that decline came to hit bottom when the West, and I have to show Russia as well, was essentially attempted to carve up China. Now that is completely reversed, and China wants its proper place in the world, but it's saying it will determine its place in the world. It's not going to be a junior partner to the United States. That's where you get the Thucydides trap, because a challenging power to the status quo power, there's 3 outcomes always. You can allow it to happen. Allow China to be the leading power in the world. I want to stay away from hegemon because China isn't interested in exporting an ideology like the United States. It's a neoliberalism, it's exceptionalism. That's a cover for geopolitical supremacy. The Chinese are not interested in that, at least at this point right now. Okay, so you can accept it. Okay, of course the United States isn't going to accept it. You can negotiate. You can negotiate the terms and conditions of the rise, essentially accepting a bipolar world. Again, American exceptionalism will not allow that to happen. And of course, the third one is war. Now, let me give you an example where we had a rising power challenging the status quo power. It was the United States and Great Britain. After the Second World War, Britain was broke, its empire was evaporating, and there was no war. Okay, and the British pound was no longer the global currency. The dollar was. Okay, so that was peaceful. All right. The problem is that the United States believes that it has this moral right, God-given right, to control the destiny of the planet. The Chinese say no. I mean, you got to where you are because of your assets and your resources. Well, we have assets and we have resources. And what about this liberal order and democracy that you keep talking about? The United States breaks international law all of the time, invades countries left and right, destroys them, never held to account. So the Chinese are saying, if you want to play the moral authority card, then what moral authority do you have? And what about trade? You want to determine the trading rules. Well, why do you have that right? Our economy, most likely than not, is bigger than yours. So this is where we get into this trap, because number one, the United States is not going to allow itself to be displaced. Number two, because of its exceptionalist ideology, it cannot see China as a legitimate partner. See, this is even worse than the trap, because the United States will not give way to new realities. All right. At the end of the Second World War, the United States, all by itself, was the source of 50% of the world's GDP. 50%. Today, it's 15 to 17%. And what? It has 3% of the world's population. So all status quo superpowers or great powers, they come and they go. There's nothing permanent about it. And this is something the American political elite, the blob, cannot understand. And of course, I was born and brought up there. You lived there for a long time. Exceptionalism is taught. It is accepted as true. And this is what's going to make dealing with China very, very difficult, because it's almost like violating a religious tenet, a civic religious tenet. This can't be, because we're better. We have a better system. Democracy? Ask Bernie Sanders supporters if there's democracy. All right? And I'm sure the Chinese one day will bring it up. All right? We don't see China does not have territorial ambitions. It's not invading countries. It's not dictating to countries. What it's doing in its neighborhood will say, we are the hegemon. Now, we can help you or we can hurt you, but you can come our way, or you can be in a military alliances with a country that's thousands and thousands of miles away. And the Chinese saying that is a new world order. And we will continue down the path that we wish. Right? China is not going to be intimidated. It will slowly but surely achieve its aims. It's going to be up to the United States if they want to use military force. We were asked earlier in a podcast with Alexander Mikiris, does that mean that China will invade Taiwan? No, I don't think it wants to do that. It wants Taiwan to come back. All right. And it will give terms and conditions for that. Of course, it doesn't like the idea of the United States selling arms to it, because China sees Taiwan as part of China. And that is a very important thing. I think the last thing they want to do is to have a military conflict within what they call their own country. Right. So the United States will use that. Okay. And then we have had, as this quote unquote trade war going on, the United States has had, naval vessels going through the Straits of Taiwan, which of course is very provocative. Do the Chinese go by California very often, or do they sail into the Caribbean? They don't. All right, and the Americans must protect the trading shipping routes. Well, why would China, in its right mind, want to interrupt its trade to the world? It's the United States that can use its naval power to disrupt global trade and hurt China. It's not the Chinese that are going to do that. It doesn't make any logical sense why they would do that. So the trap is in play, and it's really, the ball is in America's court, because China sends very clear signals what it's going to do.
So would you say that in all, looking at everything equal across the board, would you say that Washington and China have reached parity? And if so, what would Washington accept from China in order to kind of say, okay, we're equals now? What circumstances would need to take place?
I asked two experts that on my program yesterday, and neither one of them could give a very clear answer. See, the problem, if the United States was had a realist foreign policy, then it could negotiate with the Chinese. But as soon as you get out of the gate, we'll say, well, we're a democracy, so you're not, so we're superior. We know what's best. See, it gets down to values as well. And this is a huge impediment, because if the United States was just realist, they'd say, well, let's just have spheres of influence. We'll tiptoe very gently around your area, and you do the same to us. That, in all of history, Alex, that's the way it's been. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because that's called realism. It's not a foreign policy informed by ideology. And it's going to be the exceptionalist ideology that is going to be the biggest barrier for the United States to overcome. Because unless the United States is willing to destroy the Chinese economy, which of course would be an event that would damage the world economy beyond even my imagination, okay, you're going to have to deal with them. you're going to. I mean, GDP, that's fine, but all the other metrics too. I mean, IA, cyber skills, access to space. I mean, what they just put a lander on the dark side of the moon. Yeah. I mean, when's the last time the United States did something like that? They're showing that they have capacity and assets. All right, that's what's significant. And China has a realist foreign policy.
Okay, getting to realism, you've just outlined how the two countries are interdependent. What are the realistic chances that there could be a military conflict, realistically speaking?
Look, it seems to me that, we've said many times, is that the multipolar moment is either over or rapidly coming to an end. Then the United States, and I think that explains a lot of what the U.S. is doing right now. That's why there's hesitation by the foreign policy elite to get out of Syria, because Syria is a staging ground for whatever the next step is in this anti-Iran campaign that it goes, across administrations and political parties. I think there's a perception is that once the empire starts contracting, it will rapidly contract. And so I think there's this feeling in the United States that we are militarily superior to China for now. And we have a very intricate and I think very dangerous alliance system in the Pacific, is that I think that there's going to be not a metaphorical shot across the bow to see how the Chinese would react to it. And then say, now we can negotiate. But of course, they want the Chinese to negotiate from a position of weakness. See, it's a psychological thing. The Chinese will say, ever since the Second World War, look how many millions of people you've killed in Asia. Look at Korea. Look at Vietnam. Look at Cambodia. They see this is that the foreign powers should not be meddling inside their backyard. Okay, and Americans don't look at it that way. Vietnam, that's a long time ago. No, for the Chinese, the Opium Wars weren't a long time ago. All right, and they see this humiliation at the hands of the West. So that's what makes the Thucydides Trap more and more interesting, is because you don't have the same terms and conditions to negotiate. The Chinese have their own view of what has happened in Asia over the last few centuries, and most of it, none of it actually, has been good for China, except for the last couple of decades, where they are returning to their rightful place on the global stage. And you've seen over the last year or so, even the last few months, President Xi saying we have to be prepared for war. I mean, 5 years ago, you would have never heard the Chinese say that. Okay, words do matter. They do measure their words. Okay, and now we have, Trump is throwing in the trade war into this whole mix as well, because China is a rising telecommunications power, and they want to start cutting China out of global markets. This is part of the whole thing, military, and then trying to assault their rise in the next generation of technology, which the Chinese are demonstrating left and right that they can do it. They're not just stealing anymore. They did a lot, yeah, but now they've made that jump. They've taken best practices, and now they're going to go their own way further. And they don't need the West. They don't need it.
Yeah, they crossed the chasm as far as technological innovation and advancement is concerned. So you would say that you would agree or disagree that Trump's trade war is really about kind of bringing it to heel China's rise. Yeah, and is there in Trump's back pocket some sort of grand bargain that he can de-escalate this rising tension with China? Does he hold some cards? Does he want to?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you remember when the new NAFTA came out? The new improved NAFTA. There were some changes. Yeah, okay, maybe a tariff went from 71 to 67. Okay, the thing is with Trump is he can just declare victory and say we won. All right, so I think this is the China is rising. It is a threat to American global domination, and it's a real one, okay? Not the myth that they have about Russia. Russia has no global ambitions whatsoever, okay? But China is a civilization on the rise again. And this is something the United States has never, ever faced. Think about the wars the U.S. has fought. They fight poor people. They invade countries that can't resist invasion. China has the ability to say no. And that's what the Americans can't get their head around because it's never happened before.
Yeah. A rise of a non-European power, a non-Western power as well, which makes it even more interesting.
And China doesn't want to be a junior partner in a Western-led coalition. Yeah. Why? Why would they? I've been there. The Chinese know where they're going, and they know how to get there, and they are committed. And they have vast resources to do that. Look at the United States, as they all quibble about what Trump. Did you see that Washington State television station do kind of like an IA?
With Trump. Yeah,
everybody's talking about that.
Speech. Yeah.
When the Chinese are putting landers on the dark side of the moon. I mean, think of that. Okay. The Chinese see the silliness of all of this, and they see Mike Pompeo go to Cairo and make a complete ass out of himself, okay, saying the same thing over and over again. Why? And that about American entrenchment in the Middle East. Why would the Chinese see that and they say, these people, these Americans, you can't trust them to negotiate, okay? So they'll go on their own way. The Chinese have a lot of cards too. They're dumping U.S. treasuries. A lot of people are dumping U.S. treasuries, okay? So this is the trap is set, and it's the ball is in Washington's court. And I told you the 3 ways this can happen. They better take number 2, negotiate. But that's going to be a hard, bitter pill to swallow because the United States has never had to do that with another country.
Well, they got the man who wrote The Art of the Deal and who loves the negotiations. So let's hope that Trump does move forward with some sort of negotiation and some sort of de-escalation. But we've said it many times, he's got the whole blob, the whole swamp around him. The Boltons, the Pompeos, and all these guys.
And they want him to fail.
Yeah.
They want him to fail.
Yeah. And we will do a video on Pompeo very shortly. So we'll get to that topic as well. For now, Peter Lavelle, host of RT's CrossTalk. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click the subscribe button down below and click on the notifications bell. Smash that like button. Donate to us on PayPal and Patreon. The links are in the description down below. And of course, go to the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt. It really helps us out a lot. And you can get a copy of this show in audio format on iTunes and on Soundcloud. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's CrossTalk. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.